Community impact has often been the theme of past Western New York Independent Living Families of Agencies annual meetings, but never more than in the fiscal year just completed, with exciting events, additions of several new avenues of service, and expansions of others.
Speaking of annual meetings, it was almost exactly 1 year ago when the WNYIL faithful had last gathered at the 4 Points by Sheraton Hotel for our 34th annual meeting. After the presentation of awards and vital business like the basket auction, the keynote speaker David Capozzi, the executive director of the U.S. Access Board, demonstrated ways that accessibility for citizens with disabilities was increasing in physical accommodations and more person-sensitive official representations like the disability symbol.
The Western New York Independent Living Agencies went all out to enable our consumers to participate in the electoral process, holding Meet the Candidates Day in all 3 cities. Among those who came to the Job Club Room in Buffalo on October 22nd to address their constituents with disabilities were those running for U.S. Congress, the New York State Senate and Assembly, State Supreme Court Justice, Erie County Clerk, and more.
A few days later, over in Batavia, Independent Living of the Genesee region welcomed candidates running for U.S. Congress, New York State Senate, and New York State Assembly.
And on the 30th, it was almost deja vu as Independent Living of Niagara County also welcomed candidates for U.S. Congress, New York State Senate, and State Assembly to the Cataract City.
On February 11th, our eager volunteers gathered before dawn to bus into Albany and share independent living concerns with our elected representatives on Legislative Education Day. We met a few friends in the well of the Legislative Office Building. Some of our gang is in the middle back in the navy blue t-shirts. To give a better look, some line up to show off their new WNYIL logo tees. Having fought the good fight, our weary warriors are refreshed on the way home.
Then, April 2nd, in solidarity with consumers on 2015 World Autism Awareness Day, 16 Western New York Independent Living staff show that they have at least some blue or navy blue clothing.
Also in April, when your average suburban family wants to enjoy a good brunch with a few close friends at Antonio's Banquet and Conference Center, it might as well be during ILNC's Meet the Policymaker breakfast, so you can chat with 62nd District State Senator Robert Ortt.
On April 17th, once vital activities like placing basket auction tickets were done, New York State Office of Mental Health Commissioner Anne Marie T. Sullivan, M.D., addressed Mental Health Peer Connection's 7th annual Policymaker Breakfast at Templeton Landing. All were moved when Susan Suchin, president of the Domestic Violence Prevention Group, Love Shouldn't Hurt.tv, received the Cheryl Davidson Humanitarian Award.
All the friends of ILNC were thrilled when Healthy Minds of Niagara opened an outreach office on Walnut Street in Lockport. Helping cut the ribbon are Cheryl Blacklock, Executive Director of the Mental Health Association of Niagara County, Scott Kodrowski, State Senator Robert Ortt's Chief of Staff, ILNC Council Chair Paul Beekman Jr., and Laura J. Kellerman, Niagara County's new Mental Health Director. The gang settles into their new digs.
Ribbon cutting. This is a milestone for us in really celebrating the accomplishments of 4 organizations coming together to really meet the needs of individuals.
Genesee County Manager Jay Gazelle leapt into the breach at ILGR's 4th annual Policymakers Luncheon when the announced speaker, County Legislator Chair Ray Ciafrini, was hospitalized. The shindig took place May 21st at Bond's Restaurant.
Then in early June, Executive Director Doug Uziak went to the Western Regional Self-Advocacy Conference titled Self-Advocacy, Together We Pave the Way at the Niagara Falls Convention Center to accept the Self-Advocacy Association of New York State's Agency of the Year Award. Here's what happens when Becky asks him to say cheese.
When the New York State Wage Board held its first public hearing on the proposal to increase the state's minimum wage to $15 per hour for fast food workers, the Coalition for Economic Justice and others held a Fight for 15 demonstration in Niagara Square. But inside, disability rights advocates ask, why not raise it for personal care attendants also? As word gets around, more join the effort and additional friends arrive. Western New York Independent Living Director of Advocacy and Public Policy, Todd Varwork, explains our position to the media.
Rate goes up for other people, but not for home health care. So we will absolutely lose qualified people because, look, what we ask them to do is not a glamorous job. So if I've got a choice between being a home health care worker and coming to work and helping me out in very unglamorous ways, or maybe going over there and earning an extra $5, I can definitely see many of the people that work with me going, you know what, I'd rather live cheeseburgers.
Late in June, ILNC held a pre-Americans with Disabilities Act celebration picnic in Hyde Park in Niagara Falls called the Freedom Festival, with hardworking cooks and others making plenty of food, plus Mr. Soundman in the Shadows providing karaoke for the singers, an agency literature table, among others, a trolley-style metro bus demonstrating its wheelchair ramp, and like any good picnic, reporters from cable and broadcast television, newspapers, and radios to hear us. Huh? Oh, we forgot to tell you. This was also a press conference for disability advocates to protest Metrobus' recent elimination of much of the Route 55L bus line, severing the only uninterrupted public transportation between the Niagara County seat, Lockport, and the county's largest city, Niagara Falls. Consumers with disabilities whose lives were disrupted by having to travel via Buffalo, about 5 hours one way, turned out along with State Senator Robert Ort and the Mayor of Lockport, Ann McCaffrey.
In July, a brief respite with nothing political about it. Jeanette Grimaldi of ILNC introduces youngsters in a daycare to American Sign Language for the deaf.
A mere 4 days before the July 26th celebration of the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, WKBW-TV Channel 7's Linda Pellegrino interviewed WNYIL's Todd Varwork, Katie Trombley, and Frank Camerata, Executive Director of the Erie County Office for the Disabled. After the work is done, Linda poses with a few friends.
Support for our opposition to eliminate Bus Route 55L is increasing as New York State Assembly member Jane Corwin joined State Senator Robert Ort, Todd Varwork, and irate consumers gather in front of North Tonawanda City Hall for a late July press conference.
As perhaps the greatest achievement of our nation's disability rights advocates was the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, the 25th anniversary just has to be really spectacular. The WNYIL agencies joined with several of our community partners to hold a major blowout at Buffalo's Canal Side. Dozens of organizations offered information on their services in the vendor tent. Our grills offered all the free picnic food anyone could want. Even consumers who used wheelchairs were able to ply the waters of the lake with boat rides by Western New York Adaptive Water Sport, plus a children's entertainment area with face painting, tattoos, bean toss, and pick-a-duck, not to mention life-size Jenga blocks. Advocates gave their reflections on the bad old pre-ADA days. Entertainment stage had music by the Bloodthirsty Vegans Band and even comedy, poetry, and acoustic music, much by individuals with disabilities, not to mention everybody's favorite, karaoke. We couldn't have enjoyed all this entertainment without our volunteers, and this was a great opportunity for the media.
Over 24 anglers turned out for the ILNC's 10th annual fishing derby in the river just off Old Fort Niagara, that agency's principal annual fundraising event, followed by a family barbecue at the Fin, Feather, and Fur Conservation Club, or 3F Club. Many thanks are owed to volunteers, including the 11 boat captains, to all who donated auction baskets, the Sounds of Serenity disc jockey, and Joe's Country Catering, which provided a huge variety of food.
Any group of hardworking advocates, counselors, and support personnel of every description deserves a chance to get to know each other and unwind. So in mid-August, Just about all the staff of the WNYIL agencies gathered at the Lions Shelter in Krull Park at Alcott Beach for a bit of information, plus lots of food and relaxation. Some came for karaoke, and line dancing broke out.
Later in August, several of our colleagues traveled to our nation's capital for RAP Goes to Washington, a grassroots conference exploring all things involving the Ellen Copeland Center's Wellness Recovery Action Plan. Maura and Tia show off their camaraderie and their new Western New York Independent Living logo t-shirt. During the March of Dignity and Change in Mental Health, one volunteer brandishes a poster with a new quote from Pablo Del Vecchio. We want to be judged by the content of our character, not the content of our treatment plan.
For the second time in August, 4 volunteers from the WNYIL agencies gathered at Karate Ken's in Lockport to put the students through a hands-on disability simulation workshop. Youngsters learned how people with disabilities learn to function in a wheelchair obstacle course, blindfolded using white cane travel, and exercises demonstrating learning disabilities and technology for hearing-impaired persons.
Mental Health Peer Connection was ably represented by Director Maura Kelly and her contingent at the State Conference of the New York Association of Psychiatric Rehabilitation Services, with the theme, Recovery at the Crossroads, the choices and changes ahead. It took place at Hudson Valley Resort and Conference Center in the booming metropolis of Kerhonkson, New York.
At least 16 of our crew struck out to Troy, New York, for the New York Association on Independent Living's conference, Back to the Future, commemorating the 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, held September 16th and 17th in the Hilton Garden Inn.
A scant 2 weeks ago, ILGR played host to many from the community who like to eat, like State Assembly member Steve Hawley, and support the agency's good work in its second annual ILGR Taste of Independence at St. Joe's School in Batavia. Thanks to the 3 sponsors and 18 restaurants and food vendors who participated.
Of course, this doesn't come close to covering all the ongoing work our people perform in the community that does not get captured on someone's camera, iPad, or smartphone, helping consumers gain the resources they need to live more independently and more integrated into the community of their choice. But they wouldn't expect any special accolades because, to borrow a phrase, it's what they do and will continue to do in the new fiscal year.